I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. I call David Reid.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a privilege to lead this evening's adjournment debate on improving national resilience. And I'm also glad that the Security Minister is responding, a man who I have a great deal of respect for. Having both served at what is now the Special Forces Strike Group, albeit at different times, I know he's one of the few people in this House who has seen the sharp end of national insecurity firsthand. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's sadly become commonplace to say that we are living through unprecedented times. The international system we've all lived under has fractured, war has broken out across multiple continents, and technological upheaval and a warming planet compound to create an increasingly volatile world. We hear it repeatedly across this House that the first duty of any government is defence of the realm. It's repeated so often, it risks becoming a platitude. So let me ask the harder question. Are we actually living up to it here in the UK in 2026? This evening, I'll set out why I believe we are falling short, and more importantly, what we might be able to do about it. How we build a country and citizenship resilient enough to meet the growing and interconnected number of threats to our homeland. Happily.
Madam Deputy Speaker, first of all, can I commend the honourable member for Exmouth and Exeter East coming forward. And it's not just defence when it comes to resilience, it's also about health. And I cast the mind of the honourable gentleman in this House back to the national emergency of COVID-19, the report of the UK COVID inquiry, and it stated about fatal strategic flaws. The NHS didn't collapse, it came close. Patients often did not receive the standard of care that they were due, and that led to delays in diagnosis and treatment. So does the honourable member not agree that serious concerns about the lack of the health services, effective surge capacity need to be addressed in anticipation of another national health emergency and securing national resilience in the face of medical uncertainty? Thank you so much.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and he raises the serious points, something I'll come on to in my speech. But it is that interconnected point. We saw that during COVID-19, how that affected so many different parts of society. It closed down industry, the economy, and we have to start thinking about things cross-department, but they're issues that I will come on to. Now, the government's own definition of national resilience is society's ability to anticipate, withstand, respond to and quickly recover from severe crises, whether natural disasters, pandemics, geopolitical shocks or deliberate attacks. It rests on a whole-of-society approach in which government, business and the public work together to protect critical national infrastructure and maintain vital services. Now, last year's Strategic Defence Review made precisely this point. One of the central recommendations was a national conversation on defence and resilience, built on that whole-of-society approach and premised on a simple idea that defending the nation is no longer the job of the armed forces alone. Yet, a year on, I think it's fair to say that that conversation has barely begun. And one of the critical central challenges, both to having that conversation with the British public and, more importantly, to making the preparations to be resilient, is that living memory of needing to be resilient in this country is fading. I often speak to my father about this. He was born in 1942 in Plymouth during the Blitz. His generation is the last with a direct lived experience of national insecurity on home soil. And the contrast is stark. When I speak to young people about the risks we face, about the idea that we might have to defend our homeland, our democracy, our way of life, it remains abstract, something that happens to other people in other places. But we are in a more vulnerable position still, because beyond the fading of that memory, resilience is no longer woven into our national story. When I speak to people in Taiwan or Finland, there is a geographical proximity to the threat that they feel in their bones. The Chinese dragon across the strait, the Russian bear across the border. Those threats are real and they are close, and that, I think, is precisely why those countries do resilience well. Their people and their institutions understand in their core the need to be strong. Now, a quotation that stayed with me since my Royal Marines training puts that well. You cannot dream yourself into a strong character, you must hammer and forge yourself into one. As a country, we must now take and wake from that dream. And it's incumbent on the government to have the hard conversation with the public about how we fund our national resilience. Yes, happily.
I'm very grateful to him for giving way. I congratulate him for securing this debate and making the excellent speech that he is. Clearly, the UK faces malign threats from Russia, from China, and especially from Iran, as we've seen from recent examples. And I do commend the government for bringing forward the Tackling State Threats Bill, reportedly next Wednesday, but we'll see the business statement tomorrow. Clearly, that will allow us to deal with threats, but the public don't necessarily know just how severe they are. So as well as dealing with the threats, does he not agree that we need to educate the public on just how threatening these state actors are and why we need to deal with them now?
Madam Deputy Speaker, there must have been a leak, because I am going to come on to that paragraph straight away. Now, beyond the issue of funding, the obvious question that flows from this is who in government should take the lead in having that conversation with the public about the panoply of threats that we face. That leads to the central argument of this debate, whether the British state is structured to deal effectively with them. And I accept, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the machinery of government is a surefire way to send this chamber to sleep. But it is central to the direction of travel we must take. I was waiting with bated breath to see who the government would send this evening to respond, because logic would dictate that the minister responding should come from the department the Prime Minister is charged with leading the national conversation on resilience. And here lies the first problem. The Security Minister sits across both the Cabinet Office and the Home Office. His portfolio is broad, but it clearly does not cover anywhere near the full range of threats set out in the government's own definition of national resilience. Now, the Cabinet Office does have a resilience directorate, and it does important work coordinating civil contingency planning, crisis management and emergency response across national and local levels. And I would not diminish the work that they do for a moment. But consider its design. A directorate for preparedness and a COBRA unit for crisis response. Risk and response. Notice what's missing. There is no machinery to assess the threats, and there is a machinery to assess the threats and a machinery to manage the emergency. But no one and nowhere is anyone charged with turning to the public and saying, here is the threat we face, here is your part in it, and here is what's been done in your name. And so the conversation, the national conversation that we need to find, finds no natural home. It does not emanate from the directorates, whose remit is risk and response, nor has the Ministry of Defence acted on the Strategic Defence Review's own call for a national conversation on defence and resilience. The result is a system in which responsibility is spread so thinly that no single minister owns the problem. And the danger of that is not merely administrative tidiness, it is that when a crisis strikes, command and control fractures at precisely the moment it must hold. For example, the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, which hands the DSIT Secretary of State sweeping new powers to direct critical entities, illustrates the trend rather than reversing it. Individual departments are accruing resilience powers of their own, each cooking up policies to support their own patch. A whistle must be blown on this approach, because we risk spreading responsibility through legislation so thinly that no one truly understands where it lies. When I speak to civil servants, all who want to see a stronger and safer country, I notice that the word resilience has itself become something of a buzzword, a phrase to attach to a business case in order to secure a bigger departmental budget. That is a sign of a system without a clear centre of gravity, not a sign of one that is working. This led me to research in depth how our near neighbours have approached this problem. Countries with national stories like our own and populations whose memory of insecurity have faded just as ours have. The clearest exemplar I found is Denmark. The Danes grasp something we have not yet acted upon, that in an age of interconnected threats, where cyber attacks become supply shocks, become public safety emergency, danger no longer represents departmental boundaries. For decades, they had run, as we still do, on a principle of sectoral responsibility, each department minding risk in its own lane. They concluded that a system in which everyone is responsible is one in which, in practice, no one is. So in August 2024, they acted, creating a dedicated Ministry of Resilience and Preparedness, the first of its kind in the region, with a cabinet minister in charge. Within months, they established a resilient agency beneath it, drawing scattered functions into one organisation. One ministry, one cabinet minister, one clear line of accountability. Now, if truth be told, it's too early to say with certainty whether that model delivers the better outcomes that they had expected for. The real test will come in the next crisis, not the last reorganisation. But the logic is sound. because the alternative, broadly what we have, is a system where resilience is everyone's second priority and nobody's first. As someone who wants to see a smaller and sharper state, the answer is not a new layer of governments, but collapsing many duplicated ones into a single accountable home. It's an idea the government should actively investigate. I've also been struck by how our Danish and Dutch friends have begun to share the responsibility for resilience with their citizens, reinforcing civic duty into a far more deliberate way than we do here in the UK. Both have started speaking plainly to their people about preparedness, and strikingly, they tell much of the same thing. Be ready to look after yourself for 3 days, or 72 hours. The Dutch government now tells every household to hold enough to manage for 72 hours, in the event of war, a cyber attack, or a major disaster. Things like water, food, medication, a battery radio, some cash, and key documents. It did not merely issue advice, it delivered a printed survival guide to every door and published it online in dozens of languages. Its message was carefully chosen, and the aim, ministers said, is not to frighten people, but to prepare them, because those who think through the first 72 hours of a crisis feel safer, not more fearful. The campaign slogan is simple: think ahead. Denmark's advice is almost identical, and the reasoning is the same. If ordinary people can get through the first 3 days, the authorities can concentrate on those who cannot. Denmark sent that guidance to every adult through its secure government messaging system and placed 300,000 printed copies in libraries and public offices. It does not shy away from naming why either. Its defence minister told Danes plainly that they and their allies face hybrid war, and that each of us should prepare to be without power, water, or shops for a short while. In both countries, the principle is the same. Resilience is not something that the state can simply hand to its people. It's a habit that the public must share in. And it happened.
I very much thank the honourable member for bringing this debate, and in particular his focus on the need for cross-government action and on the need to address the range of threats that we face. Would he agree that as part of the resilience planning, addressing the risks attached to climate breakdown and nature collapse are absolutely central? And on his point about transparency, does he agree that the two suppressed reports from the Joint Intelligence Committee and from the DEFRA Futures team need to be made available if the government and across party in the House we're going to work clearly to address these issues and inform the public?
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and he raises a very important point. For anyone who understands the science and sees the effects globally, climate change is happening, the planet is warming up, and we are all going to feel the effects of a heating planet. What that does to our critical national infrastructure, to businesses and how they operate, to our energy systems, is going to be profound. And it's something that I don't think we talk about enough. I think we did talk about it a great deal a few years ago, and it sort of slid off the agenda. But I also understand the challenges that the government is facing at the moment, that there are international threats, and these threats seem to be conjoining, and climate change seems to be a further away problem. So I understand the issues, but I hope the Security Minister can sort of draw that in together to show the interconnection of threats and how we're going to deal with it. Now, the uncomfortable part, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that in terms of national messaging, Britain has said and tried to do the same thing. But we say the words without a plan behind them. The public gets alarmed, the moment passes, and nothing changes. Denmark and the Netherlands said them and built them into the life of the nation. That, in a sentence, is the difference between talking about resilience and doing it. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me close with 3 concrete asks of the government. First, can the Minister confirm whether any department or minister has been formally charged with delivering the national conversation on resilience, called for by the Strategic Defence Review? If not, and I think we'd all agree on that, that gap must be filled. Second, will the government commission a review led from the centre into whether the current dispersal of resilience responsibilities across Whitehall is fit for purpose, with the Danish and Dutch models considered explicitly? And third, will the government speak plainly to the British public about the threats we face and back those words with a sustained public preparedness campaign, not a single statement that fades within a week, but a message built into the life of the nation? I will go back to the statement that's repeated repeatedly in this House, that the first duty of any government is defence of the realm. Meeting that duty requires a state that is structured to lead and a public that is prepared to follow. We are not yet that country, but I have faith that we can be.
Steph.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me begin by thanking the honourable and gallant member for Exmouth and Exeter East. I would like to pay tribute to him for his previous service, including within the SFSG, but I also want to take the opportunity to thank him for bringing this vital matter to the House this evening. It is a debate that is central to our national security and our duty to the public. Now, I thought he raised a number of very helpful and important points, and I completely understand why he's taken the opportunity to raise the importance of the national conversation, and I can say to him that he can expect to hear much more about this shortly. But he was also right to draw a comparison with countries around the world. And I am very proud to say that many of the UK's resilience structures and capabilities serve as examples of best practice. For example, the National Situation Centre, established under the previous government, is very highly regarded internationally. And the UK Resilience Academy, which I visited just the other day, is an important part of the skills and engagement offer. Now, the government regularly meets with... Very happy to give way, yes.
Minister for giving way. The Crystal Palace transmitting station in my constituency of Beckenham and Penge is a feature of our South London skyline so iconic that people often refer to it as Crystal Paris. It is also vitally important communications infrastructure. Will the Minister join me in recognising it not only for its everyday role in broadcasting television and radio to millions across our capital and beyond, but also for the contribution that infrastructure such as this makes to our national resilience in times of crisis and emergency, when trusted, reliable communications matter more than ever? And will he also join me in thanking the engineers, technicians, operators and all the staff who maintain and run this critical national infrastructure, often behind the scenes, ensuring that the public can stay informed, connected and safe?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very grateful to him and very happy to join with him in paying tribute to the work that's done at the Crystal Palace transmitting station. It is, as he knows better than I, an iconic feature of South London, so very happy to take the opportunity this evening to thank all of those involved for their work ensuring that the public stay informed, connected and safe. And whilst I'm on that particular subject, let me also, Madam Deputy Speaker, take the opportunity to thank all of those who work at Emily Moore in West Yorkshire who do similar work. I was very privileged to meet them just the other day. Madam Deputy Speaker, I was just reflecting on the remarks that the Honourable Gentleman made about international comparisons. And there are many similarities with our international partners, but as the Honourable Member I think will acknowledge, each nation's approach is influenced by its history, geography and societal approach to resilience. Now, building on the good work of the previous government, we have set out our strategic vision on resilience. Take, for example, our work following the COVID-19 inquiry. We considered the findings and made deliberate updates to our resilience plans, including strengthening our relationships with the devolved governments through the Four Nations Ministerial Group. Now, as I'm sure the Honourable Member will also recognise, for more than 20 years, successive governments have anchored the National Security Risk Assessment as the foundation of their approach to the complex resilience landscape. That landscape continues to evolve, and the risks we face today are volatile, varied and interconnected. They include cyber attacks, threats to energy security, global supply chain pressures and, of course, armed conflict. And I'm pleased to be able to talk about the government's approach with regard to those particular areas. But first, let me say something in response to the Honourable Gentleman about accountability. Now, under the lead government department model, each risk is owned by a single lead department, ensuring those with the relevant expertise are responsible for the work to keep us protected against that particular risk. To support this, the government will publish a refreshed expectation set for lead government departments. This will clarify how they are expected to deliver their responsibilities, as well as the role of other departments in supporting them. The government has also taken steps to clarify accountability and enhance our readiness for the highest impact whole-of-system crises. We have explicitly embedded the leadership role of the Cabinet Office in our Central Crisis Management Doctrine, the Amber Book, And we have strengthened governance on risk planning and mapped key cascading impacts of catastrophic risks to ensure a true whole-of-government response. So, if a catastrophe should happen, no government department can be in any doubt about their role. Let's take a national power outage as an example. The Department for Energy Security and Net Zero remains the lead department across the whole risk cycle, from assessment to recovery, and continues to lead on the government's relationship with the energy sector. The role of the Cabinet Office is to step in to help lead the response, given the significant cross-cutting impacts that a national power outage would bring. This central coordination function allows all responding departments to respond to their impacted areas, with the Cabinet Office providing situational reporting of the whole system impacts of the risk. This way, the government collectively understands and is prepared for the risks that the UK faces. The Cabinet Office also leads on the overall response to severe weather. This is underpinned by the Severe Weather Resilience Network, where crucial inputs from the Met Office, which I know the Honourable Gentleman will be very familiar with, are shared with individual departments who lead on the response planning and resilience of the sectors that they represent. This ensures that when the weather turns, our response is unified, rapid and robust. But it's not just how we plan for responding to emergencies. We have also informed our understanding of their impact as well. We know that emergencies impact people unequally, and to address this, we have developed the Risk Vulnerability Tool and provided further guidance to local resilience forums so that they can better identify and support those who are most vulnerable. The UK Government is proud to be a part of an international community where we can both learn from and share our learnings with others. But I wouldn't want anyone listening to think that planning and response is all down to government departments. Local resilience forums are a critical part of our resilience system. In fact, the Stronger LRF Trailblazers programme moves beyond legacy structures to build a local network that is agile, accountable and capable of protecting citizens at the neighbourhood level. The Resilience Action Plan envisaged a whole-of-society approach, redefining national resilience as a shared mission where citizens, communities, civil society, businesses and the public sector all play a vital and active role. Finally, building a truly resilient society requires a fundamental cultural shift in the way that emergency preparedness is thought about. That includes being clear about the risks that we face and the actions that we can all take to improve our collective resilience. I will give way, yes.
Thank you to the Minister for giving way. On the point about transparency, in January, the Joint Intelligence Committee's National Security Assessment was partially released, a redacted version released only after a Freedom of Information request from Green Alliance. And that report highlighted that biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse are a threat to national security. So what action is being taken following that report? And in particular, when will the full version be made available to members of this House?
I'm grateful to him. I absolutely share the concerns that he's expressed. Let me give an undertaking to come back with the kind of technical detail about the report that he's raised. But I hope he can be assured of the seriousness with which the government attaches to the matters that he has raised. All of us in this place, I hope, are understanding of the nature of the climate crisis and the impact that it is having now and will have in the future. And we have an absolute responsibility in government to make sure that we are properly prepared for that. Madam Deputy Speaker, I was just about to make the point that the Government's Prepare website provides guidance on the actions recommended for individuals, households and communities to increase their own preparedness and resilience. And this debate this evening highlights something fundamental, that resilience is not an abstract policy objective. It is, I hope, a shared national endeavour. Now, I think, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Honourable Member for Exmouth and Exeter East has spoken powerfully about the importance of strengthening national resilience in the face of evolving risks. We share his determination, and I'd be very happy to continue the conversation with him about these matters. But let me just give him some further assurance by saying that next month the Government will make its annual statement to Parliament on resilience, which will provide a detailed update on the progress that we've been making to deliver against the commitments over the last 12 months or so. And I hope that that will go some way further to addressing the points that the honourable member has made. But regardless, I give him and the House an assurance that we will continue to learn, adapt and build a robust future for the United Kingdom.